welcome to the Step Stories podcast. I'm your host, Robin Breuner, and I am so fortunate to have an amazing guest with me today, the author Reema Zaman. Hi, Reema.
Hi, Robin.
How are
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on this show. How are you doing? How's your summer going so far?
It's going really well, thanks. We just got back from Portland, Oregon. I live in LA. We were in Oregon for about a week with our family. When I say our, I mean my Chihuahua and me. She's asleep on my lap as we speak. Yeah, it's been a great summer. Yeah,
It's hard to believe it's almost over. I know I have my
I know.
slightly larger than a Chihuahua golden retriever asleep next to me, and I'm hoping she
Oh,
will not start barking. Yes, actually, she chased a giant bear up a tree last week in Lake Tahoe. So
oh
that
my
was my
gosh.
excitement for the summer. Anyway, for those of you who don't know Reema, she's an author, a screenwriter, and a book coach, and has a TED Talks as well. And she's best known for her memoir called "I Am Yours." She's also got a forthcoming novel coming out in 2027 called In Her Grace, which is a legal crime novel, and I can't wait to read that.
Thank you.
And she's published essays all over the place: Vogue, The Guardian, New York Times. So it's just a pleasure to have you here. You're also the creator of the Memoir Incubator for writers. And anybody who can see her can tell that she's a former model. And were you an actress as well?
I was more of an actress than a model, but thank you. Yes, I had gone to college for theater as well as women's studies and spent about 8 years in New York being an actress,
Oh.
mostly an out-of-work actress and mostly a nanny. I was a nanny and an out-of-work actress, and then I discovered writing during my mid-20s and made the pivot. And we can go
Were
into all
you
of that. Yeah.
were you in theater there or film?
Yeah. I was mostly in theater. I'd grown up doing theater in high school and uh, immigrated to the United States for college and to pursue a career in that. And then had the very rude awakening that as a young woman of color, especially a South Asian woman, I was about 40 years too early
Mm,
for Hollywood, as well as the theater landscape to envision a South Asian lead. And so, yeah, I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in supporting roles.
yeah,
So I
I can
pivoted and
understand
I
that.
pursued a career in writing, and it's been incredibly fulfilling. I love having the agency that I do as a writer. You're in charge of the narrative as opposed to being in service of somebody else's.
Mm. Yeah, that makes complete
Hmm.
sense, and I agree. And it seems that the main theme of your writing is the concept of a person's need to reclaim their voice and their worth when it's not been
Hmm.
accessible to them.
That's
And that
beautifully
sounds
put.
like that's been your conduit, right? Is that
It's definitely.
on the nose?
Yes, very much so. Thank you for summarizing it so beautifully. That's definitely whether I'm writing memoir or fiction, that seems to be the theme I keep on writing about women reclaiming their voice usually after significant trauma.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, your memoir, "I Am Yours," that title is powerful just on its own. I'm wondering how you chose that, what that means.
Yeah, it kept on coming up. I like that there are different meanings to it. And as you read the memoir, you start to notice the different ways the phrase can be used in both positive and negative manifestations. So I am yours can be, definitely a declaration of love, of saying to someone, I am yours, whether that's a parent to a child or, a person to their lover. But it can also, be be a statement of surrendering ownership of yourself over to someone else. And so that's and then of course it can also be something you say to yourself, to reclaim it,
Mm.
to reclaim your selfhood. And so that title and that phrase takes on different meanings throughout the memoir, and it felt
Mm.
very appropriate to use it.
It's
Yeah,
really perfect. Well, let's
thank
talk about
you.
your background, if you
Sure.
would like to share. Yeah, it's so interesting.
Thanks. Well, I was
Can you just
born in Bangladesh. Yeah, I
yeah.
always give this little spiel. I was born in Bangladesh, and I'm the oldest child. Uh, I'm the oldest of four. Our youngest brother is from my father's second marriage. But I always say I'm the oldest of four, and my parents had an arranged marriage, as is the norm and the tradition in Bangladesh. They were married in 82. I was born in 83. And then when I was 2 years old, we moved to the United States for my father to do his doctorate. And we moved to Hawaii. That's where my brother was born. And then my father he was hired by the United Nations in 1990. And that's when we were posted in Thailand, 89, 90.
Mm.
And in Thailand was where my sister was born. So we were all pretty spread out in age. My sister is 11 years younger than me. My brother is 4 years younger than me. And then our youngest is 23 years younger than me. So our age difference is more
Wow.
than my mother's. My mother and I are 22 years apart. He and I are 23 years apart because he came
Wow.
from a second chapter. Um, yeah, and I was raised in Thailand. I graduated high school from there and then was shipped off to the United States to pursue my higher education. Because of the different cultures and experiences I was privy to as a child, I became acutely aware of misogyny and patriarchy at a very early age, around like 6 years old. And so I feel like my feminist awakening happened rather early. And I knew that I wanted to pursue a double major in women's studies and theater. And my goal was to be an actress in feminist movies and theater that would change the landscape of society. And then I learned very quickly that if you're an actress, you have very little say over any of that, which is why I pivoted to writing, because you have much more
Mm.
say over that.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah. And it was
well,
during my
yeah.
oh, and I was for the purposes of this podcast, I guess this
Yeah.
point is important, which is it was during my college years. I was a sophomore in college when my parents separated and got divorced. And my mom met my stepdad, whom I call dad, soon thereafter. And they got married my junior year. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to go back and talk about that a bit. I want to start on that trajectory about your
Hmm.
step. I don't know, how will I distinguish between the one you call dad, who's your stepdad, and your biological dad? Can I call him stepdad for purposes of the
Sure.
conversation?
Yeah. And then, of course,
Or
and I call him dad, and I refer to my father as my father.
oh, father.
So I
Okay,
have my
I'll do
dad
it
and my
that way then.
father. Hmm.
Okay, that makes it clear.
Yeah.
Well, so your parents split when you were young, but during the time that they were together, what did you learn about love from their marriage, especially
Um,
since it was an arranged marriage?
Yeah, I'm sure that you've covered this extensively in this podcast, which is like every child witnesses their family and their parents in a uniquely different way from their siblings. And
Mm.
so being the oldest, I definitely was conscious of the unhealthy dynamics between my parents. And I was also subconsciously committed to keeping my younger siblings protected from that dynamic. So they didn't really notice anything until after the fact, until the separation was when they were like, oh, hold on, there's been undercurrents of things going on for a while. Um, yeah, and I just remember both my parents being very different from the people they are today. Um, the mother I grew up with was very quiet. very deferential, particularly to my father, but toward all men. And that definitely had a huge impact on me. Subconsciously, even though I was a card-carrying feminist, I recreated that dynamic in all of my romantic relationships until I was about 40 years old, because it takes a minute, more than a minute, many minutes to um, unlearn that conditioning that's imprinted from the time we're young kids. I think therapists say that by the time a child is 11 years old, they've been thoroughly imprinted by whatever has been going on, and that certainly was the case with
Mm.
me. And I had to spend decades of really um, consciously trying to unlearn and rewire the wiring that was embedded in me. Um, and my father, he's a very different man now. We've definitely done a ton of work to heal and regroup as a family, and his and my relationship, which was very fraught while I was growing up. I think I think raising a teenage daughter is challenging for most men, especially if they were raised in a very patriarchal society, as my
Hmm.
father was. And he had gone through significant trauma as a child himself. He lost his father when he was 13 years old. And when he was 6 years old, he was shipped off to boarding school. So he was separated from his family, from a very, very young age. So I'm very conscious of being deeply empathetic toward that. Um, but yeah, I
Rima,
think
go
yes.
go ahead. Finish your
Uh,
thought.
I
Uh,
was gonna say, like, I think we had a very challenging relationship all
mm.
throughout my teens, because I would confront him on a lot of the I would ask a lot of questions about my parents' dynamic, and it was confronting for both of them.
Well, I was going to ask you a couple different things.
Yeah.
One, was your mother deferential because that was the culture and the society she was in, or is that her personality, or was it both?
It was the culture's impact on her personality, but then the moment she was able to leave that marriage, I've
Mm,
since watched her bloom and grow into a very different woman. The
mm,
woman I know now in her 60s, she's pursuing a PhD after already doing like 3 masters. She, you know, has this like she's constantly laughing. She has this flamboyant sense of style. I even watched her, fashion sense develop change from the muted colors of my childhood to the flamboyant colors that she wears now. Everything is different. And so it's both, nature and nurture is such um a hard thing to really dissect, because it was her personality because she was raised in that particular culture. But when she was able to break free, her authentic self came out.
I think there's so many things in what you just said that I'm relating to. And
Yeah.
I think on the one hand, about your mother too, she was married to somebody who maybe suppressed that and didn't give her that opportunity. And once she got away from that and was with a different partner, she was allowed to blossom. It may have always been there, but she just wasn't able to access it
Mhm.
because her partner she was just in the shadow there, and also younger, having children. And so I understand that, and it's great to know that she did have a chance to blossom and is still doing
Yeah.
that, because so many people never get out from under that shadow,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And the other thing that I was relating to is I'm also the oldest daughter with younger siblings. My
Mm.
mother had me at 21, 22, same thing. Um, and I also was that rebellious teenage daughter with my father asking
Yeah.
questions and all the things. So I really understand it. And I do think it's hard for fathers with teenage daughters, especially when they've had their own trauma and
Mhm.
they don't know how to relate. So all of that makes so much sense to me. And
Yeah.
it's great that you found your own way. I mean, I think I think that's a little bit of an eldest daughter. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think it's an eldest daughter thing, and I also think definitely the younger ones can be very rebellious and following their own paths. So I shouldn't really say that. But um, well, so just on that track about your mom,
Mhm.
when did you start to understand that maybe, what you were witnessing in your parents' marriage wasn't what love was supposed to look like? Like, when did that start to really the light bulb go on for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were so many tiny little light bulbs, so even though I was raised in Asia, we always had access to American media. So something as little as seeing on a sitcom, whether it was, Family Ties or,
Mm,
so many different sitcoms, like seeing a couple be physically affectionate just through a hug or a peck on the cheek. I'd never seen that in my parents. Um, and a lot of it is like, yes, because it isn't part of Bangladeshi culture. Even in a healthy marriage, like it's physical affection is generally not part of just the language between spouses, but also between parents and their children. But our parents were very physically affectionate with us kids. I just didn't see it between them. So I remember as a
mm,
kid, like telling them like, just hug or kiss or things. And when you're little, like 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, and that dynamic never being there. And then as I grew older, it became even more obvious in other ways where my mother was just
mm,
quiet, at the dinner table. So was my father. There wasn't much conversation. If there was conversation, it was more about intellectual debate because I do come from a family of academics, and academic and intellectual debate was our safe space. But deeper emotional conversations weren't as safe. Um, and yeah, I just remember there being a lot of silence in our house, and silence was definitely a way that my father would punish us, if he was
mm,
angry. And I
mm.
remember in
Rather
my
than
teenage
yelling.
years, there was a lot of yelling, but there were
Oh,
also huge expanses of silence.
mm,
Um, which is probably why all of my work has been about the voice, you know, women reclaiming their voice after trauma
mm,
or just holding on to your authentic voice as a child. I think we're all born with a voice, and then things happen to make us silence it. Um, yeah, I just remember there being a lot of loudness and then silence,
mm.
and
Well, do you
being
think?
acutely aware of that. And then, and I write about this. My mother was not allowed to work outside of the house and have her own income. Um, and I remember asking about that as a teenager and asking my father why this was. And he would say, well, you guys are here on a family visa in Thailand connected to my visa with the United Nations. And I said, surely you could sponsor a work visa. And, whatever I just started to notice a lot of discrepancies in the family we would present to the outside world and then the
Mhm.
family we were behind closed doors.
Yeah, and I think that's, unfortunately, that's not uncommon because
Mhm.
especially somebody who's, in a position of diplomacy, coming from that male-dominated culture. But I'm also
Mhm.
thinking about the arranged marriage part of it. Did they know each other at all before they got married? I mean, I don't know that much about arranged marriages because I don't come from that culture.
Yeah.
Um, was that something that concerned you for yourself, that was gonna happen to you? And also, is that
Yeah.
why it was just didn't feel like there was love there because there wasn't? Because they were arranged?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people, I've heard a lot of people of my generation and my parents' generation be, huge advocates for like, oh, arranged marriage can still be loving, but I think that's
Mhm.
an accidental, um, accidental result, that like happy result, if that is the case. I
Or they grow to love each other, maybe.
Yeah, they grow to love each other if, accidentally the right dynamic happens to be there. My parents, my mom was going to be a professor. She was always a very studious, young girl. She's the oldest in her siblings as well, and she always wanted to do well by her parents. And it's funny, we were just because I just saw them, we spent a whole week together as a family, and she was telling this story over dinner one night, because the same question was proposed to her, like, was arranged marriage very common? How did you find yourself in this? And she said, well, I wanted to always do well by my parents. And she was going to school for her undergrad in English literature. And um, And her parents always knew that she was very studious. She had never like dated or expressed any interest in boys. She just wanted to go to school and be immersed in books and academia. And she was probably going to become a professor. That was what she had said she wanted to do. And then their family was approached by my father's family, and they said, our son just returned from England. He did his master's there in economics. They would be a very good fit because they're both very studious. They're very committed to education. They have the same values, and they brought this proposal to the table. And my grandparents brought that proposal to my mom, and she said, "Well, if that's what you want, like for me, yes, like of course I will obey
Hmm.
your wishes." And so, people were already saying, oh, she's already 21 years old. Like she's getting so old and she's not even married off yet. God forbid, the rumblings in society and like the cousins and the gossipy aunts. And so they were like,
Sounds like a
okay.
TV
And
show.
even though like my grandparents were very, very non-traditional as well, like they were very liberal. And so it just kind of happened. And then I think they met once. The two families came together, and my mom and father were introduced to each other. Then they had, I believe, two chaperone dates, which also included like a herd of cousins. Like they went to a movie with a herd of cousins, and then they maybe had dinner with another herd of cousins, and then it was their wedding. And then it
Wow.
was their wedding night, um,
Hmm.
which I find to be quite horrific.
Hmm.
Emotionally, physically. Imagine that the trauma on these young people. My mom was 22, 21, 21. My father was 28. They were expected to share a bedroom the very first night. The trauma on these young people.
Yeah, that's
It's horrific.
it is. It is, and it was that way for so many years. I mean,
It
our way
continues to
of
be.
being now. Well, yeah, I guess I shouldn't say it. And
Yeah,
yes, but
yeah.
well, let's jump ahead to some bright spots of your stepfather coming into your life. Oh, do you
Thank
have
you.
something else to add?
You
Yeah.
had actually asked me, did I, because I was aware of that part of our family story, if I made any, you know, if I said anything about my own potential arranged marriage. I made it very clear as a young kid. I think I was 9 years old when I told my father I will never have an arranged marriage. That's the kind of girl he was slapped with. It's like
Well,
karma,
how did he deal with that?
He was like, well, he told me I was becoming, I think the words he used was I was becoming too westernized, which any
Oh.
South Asian girl, woman listening to this has probably heard, used as an insult by your
Mm,
father or mother at some point. You're becoming too westernized or you're becoming too
mm.
Americanized. How dare you? And I was like, well, you've also given me like th- and in the meantime, I was being educated in an American international school. Like
Right.
and I was being exposed to literature from authors all around the world and media from all around the world. What did they expect would happen?
That's the thing, isn't it? About Well, I know as a parent exposed my kids to travel and to the
Mhm.
world, and I myself had studied international relations in school, um and now I live in San Francisco and my son lives in Germany.
Yeah.
And so because he also wants to be in the world and part of the world, and he and his wife, but it's like I wanted him to have that. But
Yeah.
now he lives far away and he gets to do that, and I get to figure that out. And so it's
Mhm.
it's the good, and it's the positive. It's what you want to do as parents, is to open your kids' minds. Okay,
Yeah.
so but let's do talk about this wonderful stepfather who you call dad. Um
Mhm.
so how was it when your mother left your father? Did you say you were in high school or college?
I
I
was
forgot.
in it my second year of college. I was a sophomore.
Okay.
Was that?
And so
Yes.
what
I think it was
happened with all that? I mean, was that
um
something easy to do for your mother, or was that really difficult
it was
culturally?
very difficult. It took her many years. During my high school years, so I was, in case it hasn't become abundantly clear, I was a rather parentified child. I was aware of adult dynamics that I should not have been aware of
Mhm.
as a kid. And during my adulthood, I've had to do a lot of work to reclaim joyfulness and lightness and whimsy. Um, because I remember just being in my high school years being really fraught with worrying about my parents
Mm,
because of their marriage, and and because I was very aware of their discontent. Both of them would share their discontent with me. And so
that's
I
hard on
advocated
you.
for their separation all throughout my high school years. Um, and finally, my mom was able to leave. She got a job under the table, started, you know, saving up money. Um, and I think she had spoken to and came up with a plan with my best friend's mom. My high school best friend's mom helped her out a lot, where they had a game plan. If my mom would leave in the middle of the night with my younger sister, my brother would stay behind. It was a whole thing. And it's not my story to tell because it involves the rest of my family. It's hard when talking about w- your parents' divorce because you're acutely aware of it's not your divorce, but it also
Mhm.
did have a huge lifelong impact on you. So I try to be
Of course.
conscious of the many moving parts and the many people involved in this story, which happens to be my story, but also their story. So
Mhm.
if I have long pauses, it's because I'm trying to negotiate how to talk about all of these things with respect to the fact that none of my other family members have signed up to be a public figure, whereas I signed up to be a memoirist.
I
So
understand.
yeah. And I try to be, respectful of everyone's boundaries and needs for privacy. At the same time, it's our story bleeds into each other's. Um, it was, again, I'm sure it has been covered ad nauseum in this podcast. The divorce hit us all in very different ways. Um, and the bulk of the trauma, I think, landed on us kids in very different ways at different times. For me, the most traumatic part was the last few years of their marriage leading up to the divorce. The divorce to me, or the separation and the divorce, felt to me like enormous relief. However, for my siblings, the separation
Mm,
and divorce was the huge trauma. Um, which I,
interesting.
which I'm sure is not unique to many sibling groups. Um,
And your
and
ages, you had
so,
the big age differences too. They were still at
yeah,
home, right?
they were still at
Yeah.
home, and then they were ripped
Mhm.
away from each other. My sister
Mm,
was 10 years old, my brother was 17. The night my mother left my father and took my sister with her, and my brother was left behind, that was a huge deal for those four people. I
mhm.
was in America, And this was before FaceTime, before iPhones. I was hearing about all of this through email. It was incredibly messy, to use a very small word for a very big thing.
I understand. I understand. I had when my first stepmother left, I was a freshman in college, and my younger siblings, fair amount younger, were still at home, and they were dealing
Yeah.
with also that going on, and it affected me horribly. I mean,
Yeah.
I ended up leaving college because
Oof.
the whole thing was messy, and so I really uh, my heart to your heart, I really remember it, and I really remember
Yeah.
how difficult it was, and it's really hard to be the oldest who feels protective of your younger
Mhm.
siblings, and to not be there, and to be part of it, and to be away. I really remember that.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. And I was in a completely new country. I'd never lived,
yeah.
I was in upstate New York. I was experiencing racism for the first time, because American
Mhm.
racism is very different than Asian racism. Um, and my family was falling apart.
Mm.
Um, it was very, yeah, I hated my 20s. People look back at
Mm.
their college years as like, oh, wonderful. I mean, not you, neither you nor I, but like, I hated college. I hated my 20s. I don't think I really found my footing until like my mid 30s,
Oh.
my 30s, like once I started writing. Yeah, I mean, my siblings and I, we talk about this. There's always a tax that comes from divorce. It's just that it manifests in different ways for different people. But there is a tax that the kids pay, that the parents pay. It's just different for everybody, you know? At the same
And
time, I'm a
it's
huge advocate for divorce, because I think
yeah,
one of the most painful things a child can grow up witnessing is an unhealthy marriage.
right.
And when
That's
when
right.
two people who do not love each other, to put it lightly, split up, two things, like, of the many things that can transpire, two of the positive things is that, one, their children are no longer witnessing and being imprinted by an unhealthy dynamic. And two, their children now have a chance at seeing their parents find love in the future, and
Hmm.
and feel that healing as their parents are healing.
Hmm.
Which brings me to my dad. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was an angel, that showed up in our lives. And they met a month after my parents' divorce was finalized, and they fell in love within a matter of days. Occasionally it happens. And I lost my mind because my mom had never dated, and she was telling me over Skype that she met the love of her life at a teachers conference. And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" And then 10 months later, they were married, and they've been married
Wow.
ever since. And they've been together for, oh my gosh, it's been over 20 years. Yeah, over 20 years now. And
That's
it's been the
wonderful.
greatest. Yeah. And
And so how long did it take you? You will go, you can go ahead, but I want to know how long it took you to I mean, that's so fast. That turnaround,
yeah,
like how did you warm up to him? I mean, how long did it take you?
I was desperate for a father figure who, like, I could bond with in the way that
Mhm.
my dad offered. So, the first time I met him in person was their wedding. Not their actual wedding, but when we all flew in. I was flying in from New York to Oregon for their wedding week, and they picked me up from the airport, my mom, my dad, my brother, and my sister. And we were going to spend a couple of days in this remote cabin, belonging to someone in the family. And I remember being like, are we going to be, is this like the beginning of a true crime novel? But I also just, we were going to spend Christmas together. And it was our first Christmas ever in our lives, because we didn't grow
Mm,
up, celebrating Christmas. And I was I was 21 years old. I just turned 21 that November, and this was the December. And I remember waking up on Christmas morning being like, geez Louise, are other people doing this like every year? Like, wow. And I think like one of the reasons I've always been an artist and I've always like known that I was going to be some sort of artist, and now I'm a writer, which is like the most writers, like you are constantly present as well as observing a situation.
Hmm.
And maybe because I was Bangladeshi, but being raised in Thailand, but raised in American culture, but not part of American culture. Like I've always been present, but also witnessing.
Hmm.
And not only culturally, but then also the family culture. I remember so many periods of so many points in my life as a child, all throughout into, teenagehood and then adulthood, being like, are other people living like this? And we had something very different going on. And that Christmas was like that. I was like, oh, people are waking up to presents and like a crackling fireplace and like chocolate. You're allowed to have chocolate first thing in the morning and hot cocoa. And there were presents, and I write about this in my memoir. There were presents for all of us and beautifully wrapped presents. I was just so stunned. And for when it like came to my dad, and you know, I asked him, would can I call you dad? And that was going to like be our present to each other. And he said yes, and I was so happy. So it didn't take
That's
didn't take me long
It
at
didn't
all.
take long. That's the
No,
first
and
time you spent time with him. You felt it from the get-go with him. You just really
it was it,
I
it was both. It was and both, where I had been so I mean, the little girl in me had been so desperate for that type of love, and thankfully he arrived.
mm,
It wasn't
that's
misplaced.
beautiful. Yeah. It's it's amazing that you were able to be so accepting so quickly. After everything you've said that you questioned so much and um you're reserved and everything you've said, I think it's fascinating that you
Yeah.
were the one that said that to him because I know that, well, in my story, and I've said it on this podcast many times, ironically, well, we have a lot in common. My
Yeah.
birthday's in November too. I think we have really close birthdays too. Um,
Yeah.
uh, it happened to me on a Christmas with my
Wow.
new stepmother and
Mm.
my father, and I was the opposite because my mother had just died and I rejected. I
Oh,
did not want to call her mom. And it was being forced on me to call,
yeah.
to suddenly have this new mom and call her mom and accept all of it. And I, um, being the oldest daughter, very still loyal to my mother who had died, was
Mhm.
no. So I find that super fascinating that you
Yeah.
wanted this so badly. And so what was it? Did he do something or that just made you feel so naturally warm to him? Or was it just, I just want this. I want this is all so great.
It's him. He's
Mhm.
like the kindest, warmest man. He it's and yes, like, you know, my my father had disowned me the month before because I hadn't through an email that he sent to me while I was at school. Um, the reasoning being that I hadn't stepped in to forbid my mother from getting remarried. That was
Mhm.
the reasoning. It was a 10K long email. So in my mind, I thought I was fatherless at that point. So that was already that part of the dynamic. But the largest credit is embodied in my dad. He is the warmest, kindest, like sweetest person.
And so how did he show you how to be a loving man? How to be a loving father beyond just
Yeah, I
being that
mean,
way?
yeah, the way he is with us, he was with us, like he never treated us as stepkids, nor did he ever like be overbearing in any way. He never tried to like discipline us or he never overstepped any boundary. Um, even though like we were all just kind of like pinwheeling, like we didn't even know to have conversations about boundaries, but just I think inherently he just knew how to show up for us. And he does say now that like he made a decision with himself that he was going to show up in any shape that the three of us needed, knowing that it would be
Mm.
different shapes for each of us and at different points. I wanted the whole of him. I wanted a dad. And so he showed up completely. He matched my need. And then my siblings, my sister was so little and she was like, great, we have presents, we have someone else to love us. Like she was bouncing into it with joy too. My brother, understandably, was much more reserved. He was still living with my father back in
Mm.
Thailand,
Mm.
so like that is his story. I mean, now 20 years later, we're all super, super tight, and it's not like there was ever any like conflict between any of us. It just took us three kids different tempos to arrive to the place we are now. Mine was
Mm.
immediate. Yeah.
That makes a
And
lot of sense.
yeah. And I mean, there is a funny story about the first time we had, I think I had like picked up a phone. I was visiting my mom during that summer, and he called. And my mom and I have very similar voices. So I picked up the phone. I said, hi. And he goes, hey, babe. And I was like, this is not babe. And this was before like I had come to terms with the idea that my mom was dating. So that's like a funny, family lore that we do share often. And I was like, this is not babe. And I was like, Mom, your boyfriend called. And then 6 months later, I'm asking him if I can call him dad. Like it all
Wow.
worked out.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah. And then I was her maid of honor at their wedding. And I just remember
Mm.
crying out of so much joy and just an overwhelming amount of emotion and feeling like, but she's going to be safe now, which I think that's you asked me like, what did he do? It was the way he met us emotionally. And then it was the way I saw my mom being around him. What a child
He
needs
was a
more than,
safe adult.
yeah, he exudes it. And
Mhm.
some men do and some men don't, and my life has been a study in safe men and unsafe men. My career certainly has been, that. And what a child needs most of all, I think, growing up, aside from like, yes, financial stability, food, water, shelter, clothing, access to education, they also need to be around a mother who is emotionally regulated, and her joy or her lack thereof, and her sense of safety or her lack thereof will have such a huge impact on that child.
Mm.
And
Mm.
being around my mother when I could feel that she felt safe was enormous. It was enormous.
Yeah, that's an enormous statement, actually, because that means so much to the children and what a huge effect that has on the children. Not
Hmm.
everybody understands it. Even me, I didn't always understand that when my
Yeah.
children were growing up. And when I actually understood it better when I was growing up than I understood it
Mm.
myself as a mother.
Yeah.
But well, so, and this is actually one of the big themes I like to talk about on this
Yeah.
podcast is how our childhood experiences affects us as adults and affects
Mm.
us in the relationships we have as adults, whether that's as a parent, with friendships, or with love relationships. And I'm
Hmm.
wondering for you, having seen two different kinds of marriages, and I know the majority of what you saw as a child was your father and your mother, but,
Hmm.
um, how has that influenced you as an adult in your relationships? And I know you've written about it a
Yeah.
lot about it.
Yeah. I mean, I've yet to have a healthy romantic relationship. I've also taken huge expenses of time away from dating.
Mhm.
But it took me, I think, until I was 40 years old to really finish unlearning what I had learned from that early childhood modeling. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, I mean, my friendships have always been secure attachment, and my family relationships, for the most part, have always had, secure attachment. But for a long time in my romantic relationships, I just recreated um, that dynamic of a woman being deferential to a man.
Mm.
Yeah. And then another dynamic that would often pop up is being partnered with a man who felt threatened by my qualities, whether it was my intelligence or my physical beauty or, you know, the fact that I pulled the spotlight from him, and from his insecurities he would then become possessive and controlling and abusive.
Mm.
So
And now you
those are the
understand.
yeah. And I mean, it's been a while that I've been in a relationship. My last long relationship ended in 2023, and I've been very
Mm.
happily single ever since, and just focused on, writing this latest book and getting it out into the world. I moved from Oregon to LA. We've been here for the last 2.5 years, my Chihuahua and me. Um, and yeah, and I think the biggest thing has also been like creating safety and joy for myself when I didn't grow up as like the most childlike child.
Mhm.
And like, my I was being interviewed for a book a couple of weeks ago, and I realized in the conversation that one of the biggest gifts was actually adopting Fia, my Chihuahua, in 2020 for many, many reasons. She's the biggest gift in my life. Um, but also like she helps me be childlike
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
joyful and whimsical in a way that I never had. I think the first nap I ever took as an adult was with Fia because dogs love napping. And when you fall in love with
Yes.
a dog, you learn, oh my gosh, the joy of taking a midday nap. So,
And
and
that
like
unconditional love.
that
Unconditional
unconditional
love.
love, and from
Mhm.
that,
It's
the
the best.
unconditional safety. Yeah. And so I think,
Yeah.
healing comes in many stages.
Mhm.
And this like most recent stage for this last like 5, 6 years has been like just creating an environment of safety for myself on my
Mhm.
own terms, being around people who are emotionally regulated adults, who, don't bring chaos or drama or their temper tantrums into my life. Yeah. Because I think in my 20s, I was still recreating those dynamics over and over again, not just in romantic relationships, but also female friendships. Um, yeah. I don't know if I really answered your question. I think I kind of went in many different tangents,
That's all
but
right. That's all right.
yeah,
I really appreciate your complete honesty and the insights that you have. You're a very deep thinker, clearly.
thank you.
Is there anything else? I mean, I'm thinking about one of the last things I'm thinking about is what your idea of belonging is now
Mm,
after all the things you've been through. And I'm just wondering about that. And I'm wondering if there's anything else, any other little bits of wisdom that you haven't talked about that you might leave with
oh,
our
thank you.
listeners.
Um, I love the idea of belonging. I feel like again, because my cultural background is so, I guess, diverse, whenever people ask me where I come from, I say Bangladesh. But really, my belonging stems from my siblings. I think the
Mm,
biggest sense of belonging I have is that I'm the oldest sister to these three incredible people, as well as now my sister-in-law, who has been part of the family for almost 20 years. That's where I gain my sense of belonging the most, as well as being my my mom's daughter because our relationship has been so fundamental in the shaping of me, especially as a woman. And the other sense of belonging I really do derive is from my my writing, and being a writer in this community. And I think it's because it's also so deeply connected to my healing journey and
Hmm.
taking everything I've gone through, whether it was as a child or a teenager or as a woman, the romantic relationships I've had, and turned all of that into art. So I do derive a tremendous sense of belonging as well as pride from my writing.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's, if I can offer something to anyone, is, any type of traumatic experience you've gone through at any point in your life, if you can turn that into something useful and perhaps even beautiful, it becomes the greatest, w- the it becomes a source of pride, but then also a way to reclaim your narrative and set it back on track on your own terms.
Mm. I love that. Thank you.
Thank
That
you.
was very, very wise. And well,
Thanks.
I know you're excited about your novel. I'm going to say
Thank
it
you.
again. Please look out for Reema Zaman's novel In Her Grace coming in 2027, and
Hmm.
please read her book I Am Yours, her memoir.
Thank you.
Lots of interesting things, especially related to blending families. And we'll have the rest of Rima's information in our show notes. And please remember to follow and share the Step Stories podcast wherever you listen, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And anything else, Rima, before we go? Anything you're
I'm
excited
just
about?
I'm just really grateful that you have this platform and that you're using your voice to share these inspiring stories. And I think you covered it. I'm very excited about In Her Grace for people to read it. It comes out next May. And
Mm,
to give you a simple log line, it's set in 2052 when an alt-right nationalist government has taken over our country and pulled back all the rights that once protected women and the vulnerable. And our central character, Grace, she's 4 months pregnant, trapped in an abusive marriage, and one day she uses a cutting edge technology to overpower and kill her abusive husband. Now she's on trial for murder, but she claims it was self defense, and her trial sparks a national awakening around women autonomy, agency, and our right to freedom. It's unfortunately very topical, and it's diabolical and a really fun ride. So I hope everyone jumps on the chance to read it.
Diabolical and fun ride. All right. We'll end on that note. So thank you. Can't wait.
Thank
And I hope
you.
to see you again soon, Rima. Thanks
I
again.
hope to see you too. Thank you so much, Robin. I've loved
Bye
this.
bye.